Hello. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Glad to have people here. Welcome to the people who are watching. Welcome to people who are chatting. And welcome to the people who are watching on replay. How is everybody? I hope that you're all doing well. So today we are finally going to get around to a topic that is very, very near and dear to my heart. And before we get started, I just want to send out a very heartfelt thank you to the person who suggested that I do this topic. Um, you know who you are. I'm not going to mention you by name. But I cannot thank you enough for suggesting that I discuss this. I am absolutely astonished that I did not think of doing it before this or before you suggested it. But better late than never. Here we are. And I am very, very glad to be covering this now. Hi, Anna. How are you? So, hi, Gata. How are you? Good to see you. I'm just posting my membership link, which I always forget to do. Okay. So before we get on to the topic of Magdalen Berns, I have a sort of related topic, but not really. Hey, Callie Goral. Good to see you. So I don't know how many of you are familiar with the author Neil Gaiman. Neil Gaiman, hey Joe, Neil Gaiman is the guy who wrote Coraline. He also wrote the Sandman comic book series, which was dramatized. And he is very, very well known. And he's also equally well known, in addition to being an author, for being very, very active on social media as a great ally to women, a great ally to the trans community, and basically holding all the right and proper views for a person who runs in the circles that he runs in. His ex-wife is a performance artist, so he's got all of the trappings of somebody who was an acceptable and indeed honored member of the ally community. Now, there had been rumors circulating about Neil Gaiman for years, and in typical fashion, the response was a vicious dogpiling of all the people who came out to say that something was rotten about this guy and that he was not what he appeared to be. Well, Vulture recently published a lengthy piece, which I have linked in the description box. I promise you that if you read this article, it will ruin your day. I'm just telling you that. Not because you're a fan of Gaiman's or whatever, but because beneath the surface of that exquisitely lefty, proper ally was a rapist, a sexual degenerate, a man who preyed on mentally ill women, a man who preyed on women who were going through a period of confusion, bad times. And now it is all exposed. All of it is out there. And the people that he tried to destroy and that his allies tried to destroy are out there saying, "We told you so." Because, again, people who tell the truth about individuals who are in some way respected or beloved or popular are always going to get it in the neck, and then eventually the truth comes out. Well, the truth has come out about Neil Gaiman. He is another example of why you should always be very, very cautious around so-called male feminists. And I've warned you guys about male feminists before. It's not a man who is in favor of women's rights. No, a male feminist falls into a different category. And Neil Gaiman is like exhibit A, B, C, D, and E of what I'm talking about. So anyway, I thought that I would bring that out since that's really what people are talking about. There's a lot of chatter about Neil Gaiman. And so I thought that you might be interested to learn more about him. Now, on to Magdalen Berns. So, Magdalen Berns is extraordinary on so many different levels, and I will briefly fill you in on what it is about her that made her so special. Magdalen Berns is one of the very few YouTubers that I can think of who used the platform in a way that left a lasting impact. She influenced a lot of people. She was the voice. Hi, No Name. Long time no see. Good to see you. She was the voice for a lot of women, particularly lesbians, who were too afraid at that time to speak out about what they were seeing. Hey, Breeze, about what they were seeing in the transgender movement. Magdalen Berns, I think you could, I call her a prophet. She was a prophet. Magdalen Berns saw what was coming. Magdalen Berns knew that the extreme members of the trans rights activist movement were going to encroach on the rights of women, were going to encroach on the bodily integrity of lesbians, particularly. And she issued a clarion call, a warning. And for that, she was utterly despised. And luckily for us, she left behind a body of work on her YouTube channel and on Twitter. I have linked her YouTube channel in the description box. Now, there are a number of videos that are not there. Okay, I don't know if somebody went through her account and cleaned it up and deleted some videos, because there was a certain video I was looking for that I could not find. But she was someone who had very little patience for the propaganda that was circulating at the time. She launched her YouTube channel in 2016. And just by way of background, Magdalen Berns grew up. She came from a pretty impoverished background. And she worked in a number of different fields. She also participated in amateur boxing, and she was considered to be a trailblazer in women's boxing. In her 30s, she got a scholarship to attend the University of Edinburgh to study engineering. She ended up majoring in physics. She changed her major and graduated in 2016. And in 2016, she launched her YouTube channel and became far more involved in women's rights organizations. Now, while at the University of Edinburgh, she tangled with a lot of people. She was very combative, very, very combative. One early thing I'm going to read to you from something that she herself wrote about how she was first accused of being a TERF. I was first accused of being a TERF after I disagreed with Edinburgh University Student Association's LGBT liberation group's statement of support for the infamous drag ban of Glasgow LGBT Pride 2015. You have to remember that back then, when the TRAs were really beginning to find their strength and their teeth, they were starting to impose their will on gay rights organizations. And trying to strong arm gay rights organizations into bending to their will. And one of the things that they did was they made a motion to ban drag acts from Pride. All right. The person who drafted it was offended by the suggestion that T, meaning trans, ought to have sought a mandate from the rest of LGB before publishing under the LGBT banner. He also felt that cis women were irrelevant to a conversation about misogyny and drag. So that was the first brawl. The second one, a few weeks on, I learned of Amnesty International's decision to legitimize sexual exploitation of underprivileged women and girls by privileged first world men when they backed the full decriminalization of sex workers and third parties, including pimps, traffickers, and men who pay for unwanted sex. Horrified at such a blatant assault on women's human rights, I shared the relevant open letter from Space International in the EUSA Women's Liberation Facebook group, expecting other feminist students may share my position. And for that, she was branded as whorephobic. It's always a phobia, isn't it? It's always a phobia with these people. Buggy, what are you doing in here? No puppies. Hang on. I need to get Puppy out of the office. He's very distracting. He puts his chops on my leg and I can't concentrate. Hang on. Out. Puppy's out. Good boy. Okay. So she launches this YouTube channel and immediately becomes public enemy number one because she starts going after some of the prominent trans rights or trans content creators on the platform. So what I thought we would do is I would allow Magdalen to say in her own words what she believed. My goal here is to educate you if you don't know about Magdalen Berns, about who she was and about her legacy, which really can't be measured in terms of the influence and the impact she had, and the amount of respect that she garnered from women and particularly lesbians around the world by operating a YouTube channel that at most reached like 50,000 or 40,000, a little over 40,000 subscribers. A very unassuming, modest person who always gave off the impression that she was somewhat confused in her delivery, but there was nothing confused about her. Magdalen Berns died at the age of 36 in 2019. She died way too young, and wouldn't you know that the cancer that took her life settled in her brain, her incredible brain. And there's a moral to that story. She was indefatigable, even up until the very end. And in a short 36-year lifespan, this woman changed a conversation forever. And we owe her so much. We owe her, those of us who have been sounding an alarm, who were being given the permission and the courage to keep going and to go forward in the face of insults, police visits, losing careers, losing family, threats, violence. Magdalen was the one who held up that torch, and she inspired all of us. She gave us the ability, if nothing else, at least she was speaking what we were believing, and in many cases gave some of us the courage to go on the platform and say the emperor is naked, the emperor has no clothes, and to start and to carry on her legacy, which was cut short way, way too soon. So what I'm going to do is I am going to play you this absolutely magnificent woman, this incredible, modest, understated, remarkable woman who in 3 short years changed a conversation on social media and left, like I said, made such a huge impact that to this day, people continue to talk about her with nothing but respect. Those of us who admired her, of course, she had many, 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 many people who despised her. So let's go. We're going to go through a couple of her videos. And you may see some familiar faces. She took aim at a lot of people. Keep in mind, this was 2016, and some of the people that you're going to see on screen have changed their points of view. They are no longer accommodating the way they once were. They have come to realize that there is no negotiating with terrorists, and that there have to be lines drawn in the sand, and an unequivocal no said to certain demands that are placed by people who are being unreasonable. So here's the first one. This is called There Is No Such Thing as a Lesbian with a Penis. Let's go.
Would you date a lesbian with a penis?
Ariel, mate, lesbians don't have penises.
You identify as a lesbian, but were assigned the male gender at birth, correct?
If you're born with a penis and balls, you're male. You don't get
Correct.
assigned reproductive organs. Males are defined by their biological sex organs. Likewise, a homosexual is someone who's attracted to members of the same biological sex.
I saw Cruel Intentions, and that was the first time I'd ever seen two girls kiss, and that's when I knew I was a lesbian.
I don't know a single actual lesbian that saw that film and decided to become a lesbian afterwards. Or any
Same.
film, in fact. It's quite well known that the entire heterosexual male domain, i.e. the world, enjoyed that scene from that film. But males can't be lesbians. This is bollocks. If you're male and you like wearing clothes that women wear and you like watching women kissing each other, that doesn't make you a lesbian.
I actually grew up in a very conservative town.
This might explain it. People that come from traditionally conservative backgrounds or religious backgrounds, they kind of tend to go off the rails. That might have something to do with what we're seeing here.
I referred to myself as a lesbian trapped in a man's body.
The amount of blokes have said that. If you're a lesbian watching, you will recognise that blokes have said.
And if you're a straight woman watching, you've probably heard a man say that. As a joke. As a joke. That was a very popular and common joke in the 80s and 90s. And now you've got these men who are saying it seriously because they are genuinely under the impression that they are in fact women, when in fact they are not. Let's continue.
That I think they're trying to infer that they're good at cunnilingus or something. But yeah, they say it.
So when do you think it's the right time to tell them?
Ariel is pissing me off now. When do you think it's the right time to tell them? When they're snogging, he's got a penis, she's gonna be all uncomfortable, it's gonna be weird. He's got a stiffy. There's all this bullshit fucking peer pressure over transphobia. So Ariel's alright, she's out, I'm out, we're out. But what if you're not out yet and you're not sure of yourself, insecure, and everybody's conflating sex and gender and nobody even knows what homosexual is? It's like she's throwing young lesbians under the bus.
I've been with women that are bisexual, lesbians who were with men prior. I've been with a few Gold Star lesbians as well.
There are two scenarios where a lesbian would have sex with a member of the opposite sex. That sex she doesn't want to be having. The first one is where she's wanting to fit in with everybody else, so she tries to have heterosexual relationships in order to conform to societal expectations of her. The second scenario is rape. One scenario is the fault of the male.
Being confident in myself has gotten me a long way.
The other scenario is the fault of society for creating that pressure.
Sure, you guys have a ton of questions.
Either way, the sex is unwanted. So what I would like to know next is how much Ariel got paid to make that video and how much those girls had to drink.
Clara is this week's special guest on Rainbow University.
I'm not quite sure what Girlfriends TV have convinced themselves is Rainbow about a heterosexual male who has a thing for lesbians.
Right.
Clara is a fucking bloke.
There's no such thing as an offensive or stupid question with us.
Just like there's no such thing as a lesbian with a penis.
We're all here to learn.
Learn how to disable the comments. So the comments got disabled, which means that you can't see any of the previous comments and you can't comment on the video. There's 1,791 downvotes, and I'm pretty sure majority of them would have come from lesbians,
Right.
Maybe a few gay men as well. Clearly, nobody gives a shit what the viewers of this channel think about this video.
Okay, so Ariel Scarcella is no longer of that mindset. Ariel finally woke up and smelled the coffee. I think that as a lesbian, she realized that her group was most vulnerable to, let's say, I don't want to say exploitation, but was being targeted very, very heavily by these TRAs who were spreading that line that by virtue of putting on a wig and wearing a dress and maybe taking some estrogen, they had magically transformed into women. And therefore, if lesbians did not show a sexual interest in them, that it was a form of bigotry. It was a phobia. Nancy Kelly, who used to be the executive director of Stonewall UK, called it a form of sexual racism. And Nancy Kelly is a lesbian. And I think that eventually the lesbian community woke up and said, wait a minute, our gay rights organizations are selling us down the river. They're trying to convince us, A, that men can become women, which they cannot, and B, that if we decide as lesbians, as a single sex attracted group of women, that we do not want to have sex with men, that now we're the problem. We're the bigots. We need to be forced and coerced into these relationships with men. You can say that you're a woman all you want, but you're not. You're a man. And I saw on Twitter some of the most unseemly, what can only be described as struggle sessions, where there were lesbians who were posting on Twitter apologizing for their bigotry, for not being open-minded enough to be willing to have a relationship with a man, and begging for forgiveness for committing the terrible sin of being gay. That's basically what it boiled down to. It was really, really, really sad. Now, some of the best confrontations that Magdalen had were with a creator called Riley J. Dennis. I don't know how many of you remember him. Riley J. Dennis was a guy who emerged around the same time as Milo Stewart. And he was one of the most well-known of these trans rights activists at that time, in the mid-2000s, in the mid-2010s. Riley J. Dennis's journey, let's say, has been fascinating to watch. This is a straight man who declared that he was a woman. He was writing for a feminist website called, I believe it was called Feministing. And he used to go online and give the worst takes imaginable on issues regarding feminism, women. He was a very, very big supporter of Iran and their forced transgender surgical conversion therapy. And he, in a particularly absurd moment, he got a girlfriend who I think is still his fiancée, an Australian girl named Fiona. And Fiona, at one time, who also had a YouTube channel, posted that now she was thinking that she had to identify as a lesbian because she was in a relationship with a woman. No, you were in a boring garden variety heterosexual relationship with an intact male. And this is how far the rot had crept in 2016. So anyway, Magdalen's confrontations with Riley J. Dennis were absolutely epic. Let's give this a listen. Hang on, let me bring it up. All right, let's go.
YouTuber Riley J. Dennis has just come out with another painfully embarrassing video. It's called Your Dating Preferences Are Discriminatory. The gist of it is that he's trying to persuade gays and lesbians not to be gay and lesbian because he wants to reconcile the antithetical relationship between gender identity and sexual orientation. It's not possible to do this without being homophobic. Of course, he's got to wrap that up in a bastardized form of intersectionality theory and present himself as a trans lesbian in order to trap the unwary into believing that they're supporting something progressive.
Would you date someone who's trans?
The liberals' way of disguising their homophobia is to conflate sexual preference with sexual orientation. A straight man is not interested in trans women because his sexual orientation is heterosexual. Whereas a bisexual man who's not interested in trans women, this is his sexual preference, right? He's interested in other men sometimes, he's just not interested in trans women.
Would you date someone who's black? Would you date someone who's fat? Would you date someone who's disabled?
The reason why people will instinctively recognize someone who says, I don't do fatties, as being objectionable and rude, is because it's not actually necessary to say that, even if it's true. Whereas the default is heterosexual. It's necessary for gay people and lesbian people to say, I'm not interested in people of a particular sex. To conflate sexual orientation and sexual preference is very manipulative and dishonest.
I'll link to a
Very.
couple really good videos in the description about racial dating preferences.
You can link to whatever you like, Riley, but I see what you're doing. You're
Yeah.
conflating sexual preferences with sexual orientation so that you can escape accusations of homophobia.
But in
Right.
this video, I want to talk about our other biases.
And by other biases, you mean sexual orientation. Sexual orientation specifically refers to whether you're heterosexual, bisexual, or homosexual. In countries like the UK, it's a characteristic that is protected by anti-discrimination law. But there's still 65 countries where it's illegal to be gay or lesbian.
Yep.
In 10 of them, the death penalty applies to homosexuality. Riley J. Dennis goes to one of these countries where it's illegal to be gay with his cis girlfriend. He's not going to get arrested because they know
Exactly.
what a homosexual is, and it's not based on gender identity.
Would you date a trans person, honestly?
No, I would not date a trans person. I wouldn't date a male trans woman because they're male, and I
Right.
wouldn't date a female trans man because they want to be a man. So the first example relates to sexual orientation, and the second relates to sexual preference. And both of those are valid reasons to reject someone.
Well, if you said no, I'm sorry, but that's pretty discriminatory.
Well, I'm
Is
not
it?
sorry, because I understand that dating is a discriminatory process. People are
I love that line. That is a line that is going to live with her forever. Dating is a discriminatory process or practice or whatever. It absolutely is. It absolutely is. You know, I mean, maybe if you're in the Unification Church and you get involved in one of those mass group weddings where your spouse is chosen for you, and you're so imbued in the mindset of the cult that you agree to marry a complete stranger because the dear leader tells you to, that's one thing. But in normal human interactions, we are free to get involved with or not get involved with whomever we damn well please based on whatever criteria we choose. And to then try to berate somebody because they don't want to be open-minded to dating somebody that is not someone that is that comports with a preference, whether it is sexual, whether it's appearance-wise, anything. It is one of the more grotesque aspects of this SJW movement that there's this sense that they can control every human interaction, no matter how intimate, and it is maddening. And the way that she put it was absolutely true. It is used, this dodge is used as a way to disguise homophobia. Why pick on gay people? Why pick on lesbians? Leave people alone to date whomever and marry whomever they damn well please.
allowed to sexually reject anyone for any reason they want without being coercively guilt-tripped
Right.
for it. It's kind of a basic concept of feminism.
Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying you're a horrible person who hates trans people.
You kind
Yes,
of
you
are, 'cause
are.
when you,
Yes, you
say
are.
that sexual rejection is a form of discrimination, you're suggesting that one group can oppress another group by sexually rejecting them.
There was
Right.
probably a time in my life when I said I wouldn't date a trans person. But since then, I've thought critically about it and changed my mind.
It's all very
Yeah, but he's not dating a trans person. And he's not engaged to a trans person. He's engaged to a straight girl. And I don't think that Riley has ever dated a trans person. And as a matter of fact, if you pose this question, well, you know, trans women are women, and you ask a heterosexual man who's making that argument, well, would you date like a Blair White? You know, somebody who hasn't had the bottom surgery? Well, no, not really. Well, why not? Well, and there's always this like shilly-shallying around the question. No, because you're a straight guy and you're not interested in penis, if we may put it bluntly. And there's nothing wrong with that.
Very well and good you saying that, because you know that these lesbian trans women aren't interested in you because they're heterosexual males.
There are definitely trans people who you would never know are trans unless they told you.
I'd never know you were trans unless you told me.
Right.
But I think arguing that you would only like a trans person if you didn't know they were trans is a poor argument.
It's not an argument I've ever made, because I can't imagine a trans woman would ever trick me, to be honest. I just think trans women really act like men. But they also tend to go for this kind of pornified look with all the makeup and hair and shit. Even when...
Can I just point something out, since she talked about the pornified look and the hair and the makeup and all that? There's a video here where she responds to Blair White, but it wasn't very interesting. And if you look at Blair White back in 2016 and you look at Blair White now, I have been really taken aback by the dramatic change in Blair White's appearance. Now, Blair White back in 2016 used to make arguments that were pretty sound, even if you disagreed with what she had to say. Even if you said, I hate this Trump bullshit, and I don't like this, and I don't like that, and I disagree with this. And at least the arguments were presented in a fairly cogent manner. And Blair White never went on camera and insisted that she was a woman. Blair White knows that she is male. And Blair White is not under the delusion that all of these surgeries, save the bottom surgery, have transformed her magically into something that she is not. I have a theory. This is just based on observing Blair White and watching recent videos. I stopped watching her a while ago because her attitude was turning me off. And by attitude, I mean the more she operates on her face, the more evident it becomes that her dysphoria and her body dysmorphia is, I don't think it's getting better. I think it's getting worse. Blair White's face has undergone so many surgeries, and she's using so much Botox and so much filler that the face is now resembling a rubber mask. It's that bad because she's overdone it. And I've noticed that Blair White has adopted certain mannerisms that in my personal opinion, do not read as feminine characteristics. Blair White has now turned into a parody of a drag queen, with the hair flipping and the tongue popping and the neck rolling and the attitude and the reading and the shade and all of that. Blair White used to, back then, used to pass as female or feminine. Blair White is now presenting as a very shady, bitchy gay man who's had a lot of plastic surgery. So it's really interesting to watch Blair almost going backwards in terms of presentation, development, feeling secure within herself, because I'm really astonished by it. And I miss the old Blair. I miss the old Blair White. Even when I disagreed with her on politics and everything else, I thought, well, at least this is a person who's putting some thought into what they're saying. Now it's all just mean and shady and nasty, and it's not well thought out. It's just, it isn't. It's all like rage bait and attitude, and it's sad because I do miss the old Blair White.
I'm into that, I'm just not into that. But I do find it weird that you're sitting there arguing with people about who they should be interested in sexually. It kind of sounds like you're a bit of a bully, to be honest, Riley.
Because we associate penises with men and vaginas with women, some people think they could never date a trans man with a vagina or a trans woman with a penis.
Those people are called homosexuals and
Right.
heterosexuals.
That's
So
right.
people are more than their genitals.
What he's saying is really aggressive, by the way.
I think that you could feel attraction to someone without knowing what's between their legs. And if you were to say that you're only attracted to people with vaginas or people with penises...
Translation, if you were to say that you're a heterosexual man, a homosexual woman, or a heterosexual woman, homosexual man...
It really feels like you're reducing people just to their genitals.
When are people going to recognise that these fucking pricks are homophobic.
Right.
You're kind of objectifying them, but you're thinking of them more as genitals than objects.
I have lost count of the amount of times these trans activists have called me a vagina fetishist for being a lesbian.
So I guess
Amazing.
you're kind of genitalifying them?
What will it take?
My point is, we have implicit biases that we were raised with or that we developed over time.
Homosexuality is not an implicit bias.
No, it isn't.
Some women don't do dick. Get over it.
And
That's
they can
it.
be hard to get rid of.
Yeah, they're really hard to get rid of. That's why gay conversion therapy is so unsuccessful. Why
Right.
do you want to get rid of it?
And I think this can be especially prominent within the queer community.
The queer community.
Gay men often pride themselves on being disgusted by vaginas.
As shown in my last response to Riley, he hates gays having pride in anything.
And the
Right.
same goes for lesbian women with penises.
Leave lesbians alone,
Please.
creep.
It's difficult because some queer people have built their sexual identities on these repulsions.
The majority of the population seem to self-define as being heterosexual. Go bother them.
But I don't think they're innate at all.
Well, you have something in common with evangelical Christians.
That's right.
Leave lesbians alone.
Please.
If you met someone who was extremely attractive, had a great personality, but didn't have the genitals that you wanted, you might be surprised to find that it isn't a deal breaker.
Yeah, I'd be surprised.
Yeah, it is.
Because it is a
It
deal
is.
breaker.
It is.
As someone who is trans and gay,
So heterosexual male then.
people ask me with a very accusatory tone if I would date a girl with a penis.
If you harass lesbians demanding they include men into their dating pool, they will tend to respond with an accusatory tone.
Gay conversion therapy has been proven not to work.
What? So
Exactly.
this is gay conversion therapy version 2.0 new and improved.
But you can unlearn your own prejudices.
Homosexuality is not a
Not a
prejudice.
prejudice.
It just takes time and conscious effort.
I am so done with this shit.
And the way that we talk about potentially dating trans people has a lot in common with the way we discuss other preferences.
Why have you used air quotes there?
You really can't make any moral judgments on a person based on their weight.
Yet you feel like you can make moral judgments on people based on their being homosexual.
The more you work at unlearning your own prejudices, the more you'll be able to see people from these groups as people rather than tired stereotypes.
As shown by porn, finding people sexually attractive is definitely the route to seeing them as full human beings.
I think it's worth it.
It's worth it for you fetishist.
This video is a part of my Feminism with Riley series that I'm
Oh
doing
my
in collaboration with Everyday Feminism.
One of the reasons I think this video is a really
It wasn't feministing. It was everyday feminism. I stand corrected.
useful one to respond to is that Riley J. Dennis is a very skillful tactician when it comes to presenting very regressive, homophobic, sexist ideas
That's
as
right.
being something progressive and inclusive and forward thinking. It's quite interesting to cut through the bullshit and actually get to the crux of what he's saying.
Keep in mind that in 2016, a woman or anyone sticking their head above the parapet, who was not like super right wing or some edgelord on YouTube, was very, very rare. Very rare, because the backlash would be enormous. The cost to your life would be huge, from death threats to getting fired from your job, to being ostracized, being dogpiled, being brutalized, losing your friend circle, losing your income. And it would be instantaneous and overwhelming if you had the nerve to express these views. And this is one of the reasons why Magdalen is a legend, because she wasn't afraid to express these views. She was an incredibly, incredibly brave woman who was far, 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 far ahead of her time. And for that reason, we cannot forget her. We can't forget what she did. So let's do another one here. I mean, I could play these videos all day, and I'm sad that there's certain videos. There's one that she did on the man who calls himself Charlotte Clymer, who used to be Charles Clymer. Charles Clymer, who was a quintessential male feminist of the worst type who was very, very creepy. He was being banned from multiple feminist societies. Salon wrote a brutal hit piece about him. He was something of a gadfly in Washington, D.C. And then all of a sudden, all it took was for him to slap on some lipstick, some eyeliner, and a dress. And suddenly he became socially acceptable. He was no longer a creepy man who was a pariah, who women instinctively recoiled from. And now all of a sudden he was stunning and brave. And it was maddening. So let's take a look at this. Oh, here we go. Let's go.
DJ Dennis, I always think it's going to be my last response. He always exceeds himself.
Recently on the internet, there's been a lot of discussion around genital preferences and transphobia.
I wonder who started that discussion then.
In this video, I'm going to use the word cissexism instead of transphobia, but they're really similar words. At its most basic, cissexism means prejudice or discrimination against transgender people.
What Riley's trying to do here is he's trying to frame cissexism as the systemic version of transphobia, as in the power privilege version. So where transphobia might be used to deride someone who speaks about biology on an interpersonal basis, cissexism will be used to discredit organizations and institutions which refer to biology on a structural, institutional level. Bearing in mind that in this context, Riley is suggesting that homosexuality and by extension, heterosexuality are institutions.
Bro, that little kid wrote that our tolerant views and fight for social justice is just a way for us to cross blood. That's not true. I know, bro. We're being totally victimized.
Some people are making the argument that it's not cissexist at all to only be attracted to people with one kind of genitals.
In other words, homosexuals and heterosexuals don't think they're bigots.
These people might argue that being attracted to only women with vaginas in no way negatively affects trans people.
It might negatively affect them. Nobody likes to be rejected sexually. The point is that it's really every individual's responsibility to learn to cope with sexual rejection without expressing hostility towards those who sexually rejected them as part of being an adult.
On the other hand, I would argue that it's more complicated than that.
I'm sure you would argue that it's more complicated than that, and a lot of other penis bearers would argue the same thing.
We all have our implicit biases built into our preferences.
Sexual orientation is not an implicit bias, and
No.
sexual orientation is also not a preference. To imply that it is a preference is to suggest that it is a kink. Homosexuality is not a kink. Okay?
And gender isn't as simple as just the genitals you have. But after I say that, I usually get a bunch of blatantly cis-sexist responses.
Dismissing everyone that disagrees you as cis-sexists, transphobes.
So I thought I'd address all of those responses at once.
By not addressing any of them really at all.
Number one, you're being homophobic.
To my knowledge, I'm the only YouTuber who actually said this explicitly.
In this argument, I often get accused of homophobia, lesbophobia, or lesbian erasure by lesbians who believe that I'm trying to change their sexual orientation or identity.
Crazy lesbians, eh?
They say that my language sounds a lot like a dude who tried to turn them straight, or like conversion therapy.
It's interesting that he hasn't actually cited anything specific I've said.
Those responses are rooted in cis-sexism.
Thanks for enlightening us.
Cis-sexism,
I mean,
huh?
it's obvious to me that he's not actually responding. He's talking to the children who listen to his channel.
This is because I'm not telling lesbians that they can't be lesbians.
No, you're just redefining the term lesbian,
Lesbian,
so that
exactly.
it doesn't mean lesbian.
If you're a woman who only likes women, go ahead, identify as a lesbian. But some women have penises.
No women.
No women have penises. And it is such a relief to be sitting here in the year 2025 and to be able to say that openly and to know that there are people who will have your back because this madness appears to be dying down.
Have penises, Riley. No women, not one.
And if the fact that some lesbians might be attracted to those women offends you, it's because you don't think trans women are real women.
Yes,
Yeah.
that's exactly it. I
You're
don't
not.
think trans women are women. Look in
No.
a dictionary, it means adult human female. And please Do not cite Simone de Beauvoir on this, because she meant something very different to what you think she meant.
These accusations of homophobia make it sound like I'm trying to convince lesbians to like men.
Given that your definition of
Yeah.
woman includes men, yes, that's exactly what you're trying to
That's
do.
exactly
But I'm
right.
not.
Yeah,
Yes, you
I'm
are.
trying to show that preferences for women with vaginas over women with penises might be partially informed by the influence of a cis-sexist society.
What he's
No.
implying is that there's some form of institutional lesbianism, and that informs the cis-sexist society we live in, suggesting that lesbians have privilege and therefore oppress trans women by not sleeping with them or not being interested in them or not including them in their dating pool. This is just a complete straw man.
You do not have to like men. You do not have to date men or have sex with men.
You're saying that men who claim to be women or identify as women are women. So you're kind of saying that lesbians do have to do those things.
If you think that's what I'm arguing, you're simultaneously strawmanning my argument
No.
and implying that trans women are men.
See, he's saying
Well,
that
yes.
it's the job of a lesbian, a homosexual female, to validate the identity of trans women by pretending that we think that they're women.
Number 2, you're upholding rape culture. This is
Yes.
honestly the worst response that I've heard and probably the most cis-sexist one.
So
No, it's actually very accurate. A man trying to coerce a woman into having sex with him when, by trying to trick her, gaslight her, doing it by force, whatever, or trying to evoke certain terms that make it so that a woman is pressured into having sex with him, that is called rape culture, yes. That is rape culture. And I know that it offends some people, but that's too fucking bad, because that's precisely what we're talking about here. It is coercion. It's coercion. And that is the very definition of rape culture.
actually decided to go and have a look at what Riley thinks of rape culture. I think it's interesting to hear his definition, since like, we don't want to be caught talking at cross purposes. So here's Riley's definition.
I'd say it's a culture in which rape is normalized, excused, or ignored to a high degree by many people, particularly those in positions of power.
So that's Riley's definition. But you got to bear in mind, Riley thinks that lesbians are in a position of privilege above trans women.
That's because trans women have a long history of being accused of being rapists by cis women.
He's using the kind of To
Do
Kill a
they?
Mockingbird, you know, in
I wasn't
America,
aware of
black
that.
guys were accused of being rapists by white men. So he's using that to imply that trans women are oppressed through sex segregation, as black people were because of racial segregation in the United States. But instead of blaming right-wing blokes, he's blaming women who accuse men of rape, saying that women lie about rape. Who else says that?
And I
Exactly.
think that the holy trinity of feminism is misogyny, patriarchy, rape.
Who else says that?
This is a real problem we have in the country.
No, it's right. It doesn't solve anything. It's not solved because there's not an issue. It's not a thing that's happening.
Who else says that women lie about rape?
Who wants to perv out on other human beings in a room that smells like shit anyway?
Are there straight guys pretending to be trans women who are getting dressed up in outfits and then raiding women's bathrooms, in public, to catch a glimpse of a woman before or after she enters the stall?
Men, in their relentless quest to watch women go to the bathroom, are going through years of hormones, surgery, changing their name, their wardrobe, coming out to their family, all for that big payoff of peeing in a room without urinals.
We have labeled these people as perverts, as sex offenders, and you think they're waiting for the laws to change? That's what you're thinking?
Normalized, excused, or ignored.
This is a real problem in America? Yeah. This is what we're spending resources on.
Particularly those in positions of power.
If you're going to boycott Target, you're going to have to boycott the more than 400 other companies with trans-friendly policies as well, including Facebook, Twitter, Google, McDonald's, Coca-Cola, Disney, and even IKEA.
How many?
Yeah, and a number of those companies learned their lesson, didn't they? As we recently saw in the case of Meta, which is also now declaring that it is taking tampon dispensers out of men's bathrooms at Meta headquarters and disposing of those banners and those emojis and those whatever other trappings they have. I don't know if you sign up for Facebook now, if they give you a choice of 1,000 different genders to choose from. The tide is everything has changed. Everything has shifted. Disney tried very, very hard to jump on what they thought was the cultural zeitgeist, and it has nearly destroyed their company. And it's not just about trans stuff. It's like all the, the DEI stuff and everything else. So a lot of these companies had to learn the hard way. And yes, No Name, Budweiser being a great example of what happens when a company when they hire a bunch of PR people who don't understand the customer base and decide that they are going to attach the company's brand to someone that the customer base does not like and wouldn't buy beer from. And then whoever they thought that influencer was going to draw in as potential new customers, it failed. It failed on every possible level. But again, these videos were recorded in 2016, 2017, back when it was a tide. I mean, you saw the Young Turks, Trevor Noah, and Trevor Noah has been an absolute disaster on this topic. We're going to get to Trevor Noah a little bit later. Let's continue.
How many of those companies are run by women, do you think? How many?
It's the logic behind bathroom bills that prevent trans women from using the right bathroom.
No, mate, actually the logic used to stop trans women from using the right bathroom is a piece of legislation, which you also incidentally discussed in your rape culture video called Title IX.
Most people know of Title IX because it deals with equal treatment in sports programs, but it has a bunch of other parts that are often overlooked. One of those is that your school has to be proactive in preventing sexual violence on its campus.
Despite Obama's efforts to create a guidance which would have seen the interpretation of sex replaced by gender identity.
Welcome to my channel.
Female students who aren't happy about sharing their bathrooms with blokes like Riley, listen carefully to his advice here, because it does actually apply to you.
Any student can file a complaint to start a Title IX investigation if they were discriminated against for their gender or affected by a hostile sexual environment.
Okay, and this is probably an area where she and I would disagree. Obama's expansion of Title IX during his presidency was one of the great unmitigated disasters that wreaked havoc on campuses across the country. The Biden administration also made an attempt, which thank God failed, to expand Title IX in the area of sports. Thank God that has failed. Title IX is a perpetual football that is tossed around at will, at the cost and the expense of women. It's women who get screwed. And actually, in the case of Title IX expansion in 2015, it was male students who were getting it in the neck on college campuses. The definition became far too broad, and too many young men who were innocent of sexual predations on campus were being caught in dragnets, tried in front of kangaroo courts on campuses. And we're finding that they were getting expelled, and they ended up having to sue the universities. It was a mess. It was an absolute disaster. I wish everybody would leave Title IX the fuck alone.
Why are you using inverted commas there, Riley?
This is a very common tactic used by anti-trans folks to discredit trans women as just men trying to invade women's spaces so they can rape them.
Again, why are you using inverted commas there, Riley?
Men trying to invade women's spaces so they can rape them.
Women aren't allowed to be afraid of men.
Even if this is not your intention when bringing this up, this is what you are implying, and it is where this argument comes from. Suggesting that trans women are rapists for wanting to be fully recognized as women is extremely harmful.
Riley and his employers, Everyday Feminism, think it's more important to validate the feelings of male people who identify as women and girls, because we're talking about kids here as well, than it is for girls and women to feel safe.
And I should note that
And that is why it became abundantly clear, hey Astro, it became abundantly clear around this time and a little bit later also, and it became even more clear as time went on, that feminism in Western societies had shifted dramatically, and it had turned into a men's rights movement. in order to back these insane beliefs that were being pushed not only by trans rights activists, but by major gay rights organizations as well, that basically decided to jettison the interests of gay people in favor of the interests of the trans community. And remember, anybody who wants to identify as trans, all they have to do is stand up, make a declaration, and then you automatically have to accept that Riley here is a woman. No. It's a problem. It's been a problem, which is now slowly self-correcting.
I'm not saying you have to do anything without consent.
Just in case they do suspect me.
This isn't about an individual. This is not saying you have to have sex with a trans woman or you're cis-sexist.
Very cheeky here, isn't he?
Well, No Name, you have been missed, and it is great to have you back. I am so glad to see you. I hope your holidays were terrific. So welcome back. Let's continue.
He's saying lesbians have structural institutional power above trans women.
It's saying that you should examine the societal influences on your preferences.
You're saying that women aren't taught that the normal thing is to go with men, which is ridiculous.
There's a massive difference between honing in on individual scenarios and considering wider societal issues and attitudes.
All right, Riley, just so we're clear, I know that your video wasn't specifically aimed at me. It was just aimed at all lesbians.
Number 3, I'm allowed to have my preferences.
Sexual orientation is not a preference, and the reason why I keep driving this home is because sexual orientation, which has the attributes heterosexuality, bisexuality, and homosexuality in my country, the UK, is protected in law. When you attack these definitions, you attack laws which contain these definitions. Right now in the UK, they are looking to replace sex and sexual orientation based definitions with gender identity. Your rights are under attack.
Technically, you're right.
And literally, I am right. So write to your MP, find out what's going on, and stand up for yourselves.
You're allowed to have your preferences and you don't have to change anything.
He should have just ended it there.
Technically, you're right. You're allowed to have your preferences and you don't have to change. Trans friend who says this is okay.
I don't feel the need to cite friends. I think it's much better to use logic when you get into that domain.
No Name gifting 10 memberships. Thank you so much, No Name. How kind and generous of you. And congratulations to all the people who are getting memberships. Enjoy them. Thank you, No Name. I really appreciate that.
You know, my trans friend thinks it's okay. You are using identity politics against identity politics. There's no point going down that road because you ain't never going to win.
Number 5, I'm triggered by penises because of past sexual trauma. That's completely understandable.
So here Riley's basically saying the only valid reason for being a lesbian is if you were raped or sexually abused. It's kind of what homophobes always say.
I've never said that anyone should have to have sex with someone with a penis if they don't want to.
Riley, you've made several videos saying just that.
If intimacy with someone who has a penis is triggering for you, I would never suggest that you have to do that.
You suggested that when you said that they were transphobic for not wanting penises.
And it doesn't have to be triggering. It's just that it is not something that you are attracted to. If you are a lesbian, there is no way that anybody should force you, whether by force, by, actual physical force, or through coercion, guilt tripping, or gaslighting, to have sex with somebody with a penis, a man, in other words. Let's not beat around the bush here. We're talking about a man, obviously. And the same thing goes for gay men. Gay men are under no obligation to have their attraction to men politicized to the point that they are then told, well, look, this guy is a real man because he passes as one, but they're missing something that you are attracted to, but just ignore that. It's okay. You can manage. Lay back and think of England. I don't know. The whole concept of this is utterly grotesque. To politicize such basic fundamental decisions, such personal decisions, is sickening. And the fact that Western society jumped on this ghastly bandwagon is it needs to be studied, and I'm sure it will be going forward.
Time to heal and work through your trauma at your own pace.
How patronizing is that?
Be aware that the majority of people making the "I could never date someone with a penis" argument are not doing so because of trauma or trigger.
Stoop to a new level of low, telling victims of rape and abuse to take on the burden of the feelings of trans women who are so oppressed that rape victims need to feel obliged to make some form of disclosure about the reason why they don't like penises, lest anyone think they're a transphobic, cis-sexist bigot.
So that is...
And this did in fact happen in Edinburgh. A man hid the fact that he was born male, and he was a man. He was transgender. He applied for a woman's position. The position was specifically designated for a female. He didn't tell anyone he was transgender. And then when rape victims would come in to get services, and they would complain that there was a man, an obvious man in their midst, not the head of the center, but in general, you know, that somebody had been admitted who was male to an all-women's rape crisis center. The head of this center would say that they needed to be re-educated. That was the response. It is one of the most Maoist incidents in British history. It was absolutely extraordinary. Now, that person is no longer working in that position, but it was a huge scandal, an absolutely huge scandal. And remember when J.K. Rowling said that she was going to fund a female-only rape crisis center, that she was tarred and feathered as some extreme bigot, because that's how far we've come, and it needs to stop.
Is all of the typical responses I could think of.
What he's doing is very aggressive. It's an insidious form of misogyny.
The first two responses in particular come from TERF, radfem, and gender-critical ideologies.
In other words, feminist ideologies.
Which are all proudly anti-trans.
I mean, women have always been accused of being anti-man or misandrist for being pro-women, but accusing them of being anti-trans for being pro-women, and that's quite a new thing.
You hear that? That's the sound of 2015 pulling you over, people. Suck it.
Even if you don't consider yourself a part of those movements, you're siding with them when you use their arguments. Their entire platform is cis-sexist, and their arguments reflect that.
Actually, my entire platform is YouTube.
Congratulations, you played yourself.
So even if you say you believe trans women are women, it doesn't do a whole lot of good if you're still completely siding with folks who don't believe that trans women are women.
In some ways, he's right, because actually, yeah, if you're saying trans women are women, but you're saying they can't be lesbians, then you are being logically inconsistent, unless you have some definition of woman that is not at all sex-based. If that is the case, then I'd love to know what it is, because I've never heard anyone who's from that school of thought defining women without being circular. You need to really think about your definition of what a woman is and whether it makes sense.
And the last thing I want to say about this is that if you'd rather not have sex with a woman who has a penis, maybe just don't make such a huge deal of it.
Yeah, lesbians, shut up.
Hey, Leslie, shut your f***ing mouth!
Trans women are often afraid of not being found attractive or desirable after coming out, and you're not helping.
Lesbians, rape victims, you're not helping. Selfish. Riley feels upset.
If you really want to be an ally to trans people, you could just not talk about it.
Don't talk about the fact that your family
don't talk about it.
You bigot.
Damn it, Leslie, shut your f***ing pie hole!
By that, I'm not trying to censor you, okay? So don't pretend this is censorship.
Hey, Leslie!
That's exactly what it is.
You're expelled.
You have the freedom to say whatever you want. I'm just asking you to consider if it's necessary to say those things when they reflect harmful or violent rhetoric.
Saying that by disagreeing with you, we are inciting violence. Absolutely censorious.
Because if you have an opinion that you know is only going to make people feel bad about themselves, why constantly share it with the world?
I think this might have been...
Yeah, how dare you? How dare you express an opinion? And this was around the time also that on college campuses, this rhetoric that words are literal violence was spreading around, and it was creating chaos on college campuses. It would have been nice. It would have been really, really nice if the fucking ACLU had stepped in at some point, but apparently the ACLU decided that free speech was no longer a priority. for the organization, and they had to shift their attention to, I believe at the time it may have been drone warfare or something of that nature. But never was the ACLU more needed than during that time. And the FIRE organization stepped forward. Greg, what the fuck is his name? Hang on. Begins with an L. Greg Lukianoff. That's his name. Greg Lukianoff and Jonathan Haidt were coming out and warning that this mentality was going to have a terrible, terrible impact on society as a whole if we are now at a point where we equate speaking words with actually committing a violent act. But sadly, the ACLU abandoned people who were actually in favor of free speech. And we can see what's happened on the campuses as a result.
In the most highly requested video I've ever done.
It's fine to not find people attractive, but it's mean to constantly yell about how unattractive you find those people, especially when those people are oppressed.
It's also mean to tell lesbians and gay people they're not a lesbian or gay.
And that is everything I have to say on that topic.
Cool.
This video is a part of my Feminism with Riley series that I'm doing in collaboration with Everyday Feminism.
So there's a petition going around saying that Everyday Feminism should drop Riley J. Dennis from their group of contributors. I haven't signed this petition. To sign it, I would be lending credibility to the idea Everyday Feminism is in any way representative of feminism. I think it's fine for Riley to go on about what he wants, and it's fine for Everyday Feminism to say what the hell they want. That they do it under the umbrella of feminism is absolutely dishonest. Ultimately, Riley's not the problem. It's the kind of neoliberal, corporatized version of feminism that is actually anti-feminist. When it's not busy telling women to act against their own interests, it's actually just making a fool of itself. It's really responsible for the upsurge in anti-feminist movement. You sort of have to wonder, where are they getting their money from? Just some things to think about anyway. Thanks for helping me reach 10,000 subscribers. Upvote this video if you want to see more videos like this, and I'll speak to you soon.
Okay, so as we can see, Riley J. Dennis was a fantastic foil for Magdalen, but she took on a lot of other people too. And if you want to check out her entire playlist, I have linked it in the description box. Her videos aren't very long. They're easy to listen to. And I would strongly recommend that if you're not familiar with her, that you familiarize yourself with her, because the place that she occupies in history is pretty extraordinary to the extent that she is still to this day admired. Now, I am going to close out with the day that we had to say goodbye to her. And I'm going to be wrapping up with a reaction to her death. So here's Magdalen. This was her last video.
Record this one in kind of one take without any kind of edits or anything like that in it, because I've just got some information that I want to convey to you all relating to my brain tumor. Back in August, I ended up in A&E after a seizure, basically that I didn't quite recover my arm from after having the surgery, the seizure. So the ambulance people, when they came, they put the stroke lights on, and you know, I had to go be rushed to A&E, and then I had another seizure on the bench, and then they gave me some kind of I think it was like temazepam or something intravenously to kind of calm me down, and that kind of sorted me out. But you know, it seems like maybe they were treating my case as like an epilepsy case rather than a brain tumor case, because in hindsight I'm sort of thinking maybe I should have got a scan at that time, because they discharged me, and you know, a month later, just in the end of September, I've ended up in A&E again, puking. I've been really sick, and I wasn't able to orientate myself or anything. I needed help, like standing up, and I couldn't perform like basic executive functions and stuff like that. And it turned out my brain was like swelling really badly, and I had to wait from like, I think I was in from Saturday till Friday the following week, waiting for an MRI. When I finally get the MRI, of course, they've told me it's looking like a glioblastoma, which is like a grade 4. So what that means now, I mean, they kind of got it wrong, because they said that was the swelling at the time. But it turns out, like, when I've spoken to my neurosurgeon last week, he said that wasn't the swelling. It's actually the cancer. So it's 3 by 3 by 5 centimeters, and it's kind of like a big lump now. And there's necrosis in there as well. So I'm a bit like, I wish they'd got this in August, because as it's growing exponentially now, and it's eating parts of my brain. So I've just got to wait for this surgery, which is going to be in about a week or so. And then you know, just to get it out, basically. So yeah, you know, how do I feel about it? Obviously I feel shit about it. Obviously I feel terrible about it, you know. Like, you know, I have a lot of confidence in my surgeon. I think he's gonna have to get like over 90% for it to mean anything. And then looks like I'll have to go straight into radiotherapy, no matter what state I'm in after the surgery, because there's quite a higher chance of stroke with this surgery. It's going to be an asleep surgery, not like last year when I had it an awake craniotomy. This time it's going to be an asleep craniotomy, because he's got to be able to get right in there, and apparently there's more of a risk of swelling this time, just because of the behavior of the tumor. So there's more risks in this one, I think. But the real risk is not doing it, because basically I'm a goner if I don't do it now. So yeah, I've got to do it. I want to live, like I want to live. So yeah. So that's what's going on here. I know I've arranged with lots of different people to do live streams in the meantime and stuff. I really still want to keep that up. You know, as soon as I get back on form after my surgery. But you know, obviously I've got to prioritize this right now, and just put everything else on the back burner a little bit. Sorry that this is a bit rambly. It's hard to break this kind of news to people, and it's tiring as well. But I feel better once everybody knows what the situation is. I guess I'll take a bit of a break. Yeah, I just want to say, like, you know, I think the surgery will go okay. You know, I do trust my surgeon and everything, and that this will, you know, it will sort itself out. But you know, if something does happen, I just want you all to know, like, I'm really happy with the way that I've lived my life. I'm really proud of the way that I've lived my life, and you know, I'm not compromising and living honest, trying to live honestly, and fairly, and treat people fairly, and so I'm good with all that, with what I've done and everything. But obviously, you know, I wanna continue. I really do. I expect to see more of me. Expect to see more of me. And I love you guys, and I love the community that I've created here, and I hope it continues. Other people to do the same and stand up for what they believe in, because as I've always said, there's a lot more to worry about than being called silly names, and what people think of you and things like that. I don't give a shit. I don't give a flying shit if people make fun of me over this. Like, it's the least of my worries. So I'm just proud of what I've done, and I hope to continue it more. I'm sorry to give shit news though. I'm really proud of what the women are doing over in Britain at the moment, and just generally, and that I'm part of it, and that I'm part of that. But if I don't see you again, so long and thanks for all the fish, I guess. But yeah, I think it'll be alright. I'm gonna fight. That's all I can do, really. And at least, if I lose this way, it weren't a man that brought me down, was it? It was just a random thing. I still stuck it to the man the whole way, all my life, and I'm gonna continue as long as I can. And I hope that makes you feel a bit. I hope that eases this news a bit, somewhat, because I plan to fight. I really do. Either way. So anyway, thanks for listening to my rant. I hope to get I hope to get something more. More information to you in the next video, actual information. I'm going to try and try and keep people updated on my Instagram and on my Twitter as much as I can, so everybody knows that I'm doing all right and stuff. In the meantime, so keep an eye out on all those other social media that I use. If you wanna keep in the loop. I think that's all I've got to say, really. I just felt like I had to let you all know what's going on. Magdalen's got a glioblastoma. It's not what you want for yourself, is it, really? It's not what you wished for. It's bollocks. Fucking hell. But yeah, these things are sent to try us, aren't they? So yeah, peace out. Take care of yourselves, and keep fighting.
36 years old, and a lot of us owe her. We owe her for what she did. We owe her for being so brave and so outspoken and refusing to allow the mob to destroy her. Because they tried to. They tried to bring her down. They tried to shut her down. They intimidated her. They harassed her. They harangued her. And then, of course, after she died, the celebration started. Now, not everybody, obviously. This woman was widely respected and beloved by so many, and not just women, by the way, but people who were genuinely concerned about what was happening as a result of the more extreme elements of the trans community. And the leader of the cheerleading of Magdalen Berns' death was somebody named Rachel McKinnon. Now, I'm not sure how many of you are familiar with Rachel McKinnon. Rachel McKinnon is a man who now goes by Veronica Ivy. I'm not quite sure when he changed from Rachel McKinnon to Veronica Ivy. Rachel McKinnon is an unusual case. Rachel McKinnon is a man who was married to a woman, and the woman that he was married to was quite athletic. McKinnon himself was competitive in badminton, but his wife was competitive in other types of sports. And there are some who have posited that McKinnon is a classic example of somebody who transitioned to turn into someone in his life. We've heard Dr. Oz Hakim talk about how some of these cross-dressers become fixated on their mothers or some other female relative who's made an impact on them. Well, McKinnon was obviously, or not obviously, but allegedly trying to one-up his wife. And so he went through this transition and he started entering cycling competitions. Cheating, essentially, cheating. Racing as a woman and being heralded as somebody who was stunning and brave. There is an absolutely disgraceful interview that Trevor Noah conducted with Rachel McKinnon on The Daily Show. If you look up Veronica Ivy and Trevor Noah, you'll find it. And it was a disgrace, an absolute fucking embarrassment of an interview. Where McKinnon made incoherent points, insisting that he's a woman, which he is not. He still isn't. And so McKinnon decided that he was going to jump on this bandwagon. So, for example, let's see. So we have things like this. I know it's hard to read, so let me go through it. It says, "Hey, if they're a trash human actively trying to harm marginalized people because of who they are, I think it's justified," meaning the terrible criticism or the ghoulish celebration of Magdalen Berns' death. And Adrian Harrop, who is himself loony, okay, and a very, very extreme trans rights activist, said, "You honestly think it's acceptable or a sign of decency to take pleasure in hearing that another human being is going to die," or I guess this was before Magdalen died, "at a relatively very young age from an inoperable and incurable brain tumor, and then to express that pleasure publicly on social media?" And McKinnon says, again, if they're going out of their way to harm an entire marginalized group, sure. I've already posted about why it's okay to be happy about shitty people like Koch. One of the Koch brothers died. Maybe live by the maximum whereby don't be the sort of person who people you've harmed are happy you're dying of brain cancer. So, and here's McKinnon again. You can see that he posted a GIF of a skeleton dancing in a graveyard. Here's another image that he posted. And these are some other responses. In all honesty, Magdalen Berns did not die slowly enough. Ding dong, a turf is dead. That was posted by somebody named Cornhusker Communist. In honor of Magdalen and the turban, I post this picture of a skeleton in support. Rest well. And here is McKinnon's posting. This is just some idiotic shit. This is Rachel McKinnon. This is before, when he was coveting his wife's athletic ability, and then after the transformation. There are so many more. There was a particularly abhorrent content creator called Prince of Queens. Let me see if I can dig up this video, because Magdalen actually posted it on her page. And it just goes to show how obsessive and crazy these people were. I'm not going to play it because it has copyrighted music on it. So I'm going to put it in chat and you guys can watch it. It's got Bohemian Rhapsody all over it, so I can't play it. And if I mute it, then you can't hear what he's saying. But Magdalen posted it with an edit to show how many tweets he sent at her and how relentlessly he bombarded her with abuse and harassment. Then there's, of course, this. Let's see if I can make this bigger. There's an insane trans man on Twitter called the Pissed Off Lawyer. And you can see that here he has written, "When I see this cover photo on a profile, I immediately know I'm dealing with a hate cult member. Fuck Magdalen Berns." And this was in 2024 that this person tweeted it. And I think, honestly, that Magdalen would have been absolutely tickled to know that she made this many people angry and continued to make this many people angry years and years and years after her death. And I'm going to close out with some of these poisonous, hateful observations. For Women Scotland was an organization that Magdalen founded when she was alive. And here are some of the messages that were left. Where's Magdalen Berns' grave so I can put up the all genders bathroom sign? Magdalen Berns' grave is a gender neutral toilet. Who wants to come piss on Magdalen Berns' grave? Magdalen, you did it. You did it. You got your message out. You created a movement in your quiet, unassuming, humble way. You didn't clickbait. You didn't resort to trickery. You didn't lie to people. You drove people absolutely fucking crazy, and you inspired. I wish that you had known while you were alive and that you could see now. I wish there was a way to communicate with you to let you know that you set out, you accomplished what you set out to do. You left us too young. How dare you? You bailed out just when we needed you the most. But in those 3 short years between the time that you created that YouTube channel and the time of your death, the impact that you have had has resonated well beyond that time. You continue to infuriate people. You continue to serve as an inspiration. You were right. You were right. And for that, we thank you so much for what you did. And you didn't have to pull pranks. You didn't have to do stupid shit. You didn't have to go on panels screeching. You didn't lie to people. You didn't do anything willfully cruel or ignorant or malicious. You just told the truth. You defended women. You defended lesbians. You defended the gay community. And what you did in defense of the gay community especially is 100 times more than what Stonewall and GLAAD and the Human Rights Campaign and all those organizations did, who utterly betrayed the gay community and lesbians in particular. So for that, we are grateful. We are grateful that this humble woman from humble beginnings came out, made some videos, pissed a lot of people off, and now we have her legacy to look back on with tremendous respect and admiration. So thank you, thank you, thank you so much, you guys. I really, really appreciate you guys being here. This, for me, is a stream that I have been looking forward to doing, and this stream was a legitimate labor of love for me. On this channel, one of the things that's been so depressing for me personally is that we are paying a lot of attention to people who do not deserve it. They don't deserve attention. They don't deserve recognition of any kind. All of these people deserve to fade into history, unremembered. They have contributed nothing to the discourse. They have contributed nothing to better human society. All that they've done is spread bile, nastiness, cruelty, narcissism, and bitterness on the platform. And so I thought, you know what? Now it's time to actually devote my time and my attention, and you guys' time and attention, to somebody who's actually worth discussing and worth remembering. Thank you all so much. I really, really appreciate it. And I will see you guys tomorrow. Thanks, guys. See you later.